So, thank you so much, Victoria, for coming on the podcast all the way from Canada.
I know. Well, I had to return the favor. You were on mine all
Yes,
the way from England.
all the way from England. I know. And just so happened my project manager found you because she loves listening to podcasts. She was like, Michelle, you need to get on Victoria's podcast. I was like, okay.
Aw, that's amazing. I love
So
that.
she loves your podcast. So, and I do too now. So thank
Aw,
you.
thank you. Feeling is mutual. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity. We have lots of things in common and
Mm.
clearly have lots to chat about because we've already been chatting away for half an hour before we even started to hit record.
And I was like, right, we better start recording or it's going to be midnight. And
Right.
I was like, I'm sure some of us need to eat or sleep or something. Okay. So I kind of always start off with sort of similar question around when in your life have you felt that you needed to be a good girl?
hmm Yeah, so I was thinking about that because we did, as I mentioned, have you on the podcast, and so listened to a lot of the stuff and that you wrote and read some excerpts, and I did really think about it because it's really funny how my first reaction would be like, "Well, I don't know, like I don't know if that's me," and then when you peel back the layers a bit um, you can kind of see it in different ways. So, for instance, one of the ways I think is I'm always striving to kind of like do the right thing. And I would say follow the rules to a degree. I mean, I have to accept the set of rules that are there. But I think in terms of, you know, working to a very high standard, doing the right thing, making sure that I'm pulling my weight, that I'm not disappointing anyone. Um, I think that ties into it, especially as a
Mm.
child, and I think probably a lot of people as children, probably particularly girls, have that. I need to be good. I'll be rewarded if I'm good and I stay out of trouble and I do things the right way. Now, this could also be, my personality style because for your listeners, I do a lot of, I'm certified in DISC. And so a lot of people talk about it as colors and energies too, right? So for me, I've got a very strong, like, analytical, wanting to do things sort of the right way. So that is part of my personality, but it's funny how it does seep into different parts. And so I can see it that way. And the other way that I can see, I guess, feeling like being the good girl is I'm so hyper aware of not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings.
Mm.
And, you and I have discussed this, but I'm an HSP, which if you don't know is it's like high sensory processing. So it just means that, I really think things through deeply. I'm very like empathetic to others and to a fault though, right? Like it very much helps me in my line of work, but I've had to learn to set some boundaries up around that because if I'm always worried about what other people will think with wanting to make sure that everybody's feelings are protected, where does that leave mine? So
Mm.
that has been something that I've really been kind of coming to terms with.
Yes. The thing that really like jumped out
Hmm.
during that was the when you said disappointing other people. Because I've
Yeah.
clearly got like an inner bad girl or whatever the opposite, because I still
Uh-huh.
haven't quite figured it out.
Hmm.
That's like, well, what's more important to avoid disappointing others or to avoid disappointing yourself? It was
Right.
like that's like literally I think my internal bad girl has read my book.
Uh,
But yeah, it is so interesting the thought of having conflict with other people or um getting some communications muddled up because that's a lot of it is a miscommunication. No harm was actually
oh
intended.
my
And
gosh. So much of it is that. And
yeah.
this is literally what I do in my business, right? So I do
Hmm.
a lot of team facilitation. And yeah, like it's fascinating to see how one behavioral style will communicate and then the other style will receive it and it's not received in the way that it was intended.
No.
But like I always say we can't read each other's minds, and transparency can't be assumed. So
Hmm.
it really is about trying to figure out, oh, where is that person coming from? Um, but so I think part of that is this particular quirk that I have that has made me want to do the work that I do, which is great. I need to have that fascination with it, right? I
Mm.
wouldn't be doing this if I couldn't see everybody's point of view and understand where they're coming from. Um, but yeah, it it definitely plays into me, feeling always like, oh, I don't want to disappoint that person. Oh, I don't want them to misunderstand. Oh, I don't. So what was interesting about this for me is it really took me down that road. And I don't know that I
Mm.
would have made that connection if I hadn't heard it framed up against where do you think this good girl conditioning has played into your life?
Mm.
It wasn't like a light bulb right away, like, oh yes. And as I reflected and put those pieces together, I was like, aha, okay.
It's fascinating. So many people are just like, no, I've not been. I've been a rebel my entire life. And it's like, well, I'm just gonna ask you a couple of questions and then we'll see. And they're like,
Right.
oh, maybe then. And
Be- because I think we all, like, I think there are all things, right, that we feel strongly enough about that maybe we've bucked the norm. We haven't, we have been the rebel in some things. And I know
mm,
when I did your quiz, I got rebel in one thing. So I'm sure we all have something, like I said, that we would take a stand on or feel strongly about or do outside the norm. But um, yeah, I can imagine it shows up for all of us somewhere.
yeah, it does. It does. I wrote a book about it and I still have an area that I struggle with
Is
really
good.
badly. Yeah.
Okay, I know. So like I'm super curious. I don't want to like take over and be the be the interviewer. It's like you have your own podcast, Victoria, stay in your lane. But no, but I am curious in terms of obviously this concept deeply resonated with you when you first heard about it. And then I love the
Mm,
story about how you took the deep dive and you went in and found out all that stuff about the prisoners of war and all that's just it's fascinating to me. Um, so I'm curious in terms of you doing it, like you obviously had to create the quiz, but I guess how have your scores or your perception of it changed? Like were you going into this with a ton of good girl scores and then has that changed since then or let me know. I'm super that's I've been so curious about that from the start.
I love that. I love that. So, I had already been doing loads of work. So I'd gone through the Theriault playing big, facilitated training a couple of times. So I'd been working on, the inner critic, all the
Right.
validation stuff. So quite a lot of it had been like, I'm good. I'm good. I've got this nailed, she says. And the area that literally floored me. So it took me 6 months to write a particular chapter. And it's still, if I did the quiz, still that comes up. And that's the strategic exhaustion.
Hmm.
So interestingly, we had a conversation about me signing up to everything and wanting to be
Yes.
everywhere and do
Yes.
everything because of my ADHD.
Yep.
And I'm like now wondering whether the
Mm.
strategic exhaustion is good girl conditioning or whether it's ADHD and that sort of fear of missing out or my desperate need to learn all of the things about everything, that
Right.
side of thing. But yes, it was the all the ways that women are kept tired, which,
Okay. So that one really still
yeah,
shows up for you.
yeah.
That is interesting. I have to think on that too, in terms of where that comes from, right? Is it
Mhm.
the good girl conditioning? Is it something like ADHD? Is it the whole our society of FOMO or, it's just, I'm also fascinated by learning all kinds of different concepts and like have, you might see a lot of books.
Yes, mine are there.
Um,
Mine are down there. So,
yeah, but just yeah, it is it see I always and obviously for you too. I think I've heard you saying it and I say it too. It's like I always have been fascinated with why do we do the things we do? What
mm.
makes us tick? What motivates that person to ask a question in that way or to make a statement that way versus somebody else? And that just kind of continually keeps me fascinated and sounds
Yeah,
like it does to
entertain.
you too.
Humans are fascinating, though, aren't they?
They certainly are.
Yeah, even if they're, even when they're being very naughty, you should say that, very naughty,
Hmm.
it's still their behaviors always tend to be really kind of intriguing. So why do people do the
Yes.
things they do?
Right. And I guess for me, I'm more surprised when people don't ask that. Do you find that?
Mm,
So, something I feel like I'm currently struggling with, I almost feel like I'm allergic to this sense out there in the world on social media and whatever of like judgment and shaming
mm,
all. It's almost like let's see something, let's pile on it. And I guess not to say there aren't, people out there who are less than ideal.
mm,
Um, but I guess I'm always just disappointed when people don't take a second and be like, I wonder why. Like, why? Why are they saying that? Like,
hmm
that's interesting. Like, why would that come up? Or, oh, somebody brought up, this is something silly, let's say, even with a celebrity. Somebody pulled up an interview someone did 12 years ago, and they
mm,
pointed out one thing that maybe wasn't great, but this person had been on a press tour and was probably exhausted. I think was either had a baby or was pregnant. And there was this whole media cycle that went around it like, oh, this person is this and that. And I was like, really? Like, I feel like we're missing context. Anyone can look at any of our moments. Like, somebody could come in here and pull a clip of something you and I are just saying right now, be completely distorted. I don't know why we aren't,
Yeah, it's like,
right?
where's the context?
Right. I just don't know why we're not willing to take a breath and
Mm,
maybe just ask, like, where's that? Well, I wonder where that's coming from. Like, I just think if we all did that, it would be easier. And listen, I'm not perfect, but that is definitely something that I really strive to do.
yes. So kind of circling back to use a North American term, um, to your good girl quiz scores,
Yes.
because I think
Yes.
there was something about that
Mm.
external
Oh,
judgment
yeah.
slash validation in yours.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, you're so right. Okay. So for me, so in general, my overall score I got was navigating woman, which is the mid range.
Hmm
And that feels about right to me. Like I don't, like I said, I didn't right away be like, oh yeah, I think I'm like, oh, I fall into all the good girls. So I'm like, okay, that's good. Like I'm glad to see that. And for anyone who's like listening and doesn't know, that sort of just means you're on your way, right? Like you've kind of stepped out of some of it. You're on your way. You've still got to maybe learn some new things.
Yeah.
Um, there was one in particular. So most of them were mid range. I think I did get one rebel, where I was like, all right, go girl.
hmm
And
Get
then I think I
t-shirts.
got like two good girl. And so the one that really resonated with me, you've titled it Control of Information.
Mm,
And so I'm just going to read the description is in the quiz. It looks at women's perceived faults and responsibilities, and this incorporates external validation, which is definitely something I think that it matters to me more than I would care to admit.
hmm
And so, again, this kind of prompted me to go back and think when you were asking about, think about when this has played a part in your life, like good girl conditioning. So I think about childhood,
mm,
and I can remember several instances where, let's say, I got a good mark, um, or maybe a teacher paid me a compliment or something. The most exciting part of that for me would be going home to tell my mom. And if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say 25% of it maybe was me being pleased and accepting it, hearing it, but 75% of it would be the excitement of going home to tell my mom, look what I got on
mm,
my test, or look what the teacher said. And I literally feel like I couldn't feel it for myself
mm.
without somebody else saying it to me.
Hmm.
So this feels like therapy, Michelle.
We're like, how do you feel about that? I'm not that kind of psychologist.
But it's interesting, right? And I
Mm,
can still feel that to this day. I've definitely gotten better at it, but it's almost like it doesn't. I think the thought is almost like it's not real until somebody else notices it.
yeah.
Like I can't just accept this myself. I need someone else to say, "Oh, look what you did, good girl." Like,
Mm,
and literally, that's probably the funny thing is that's probably the exact words my mom would have used. Good
yeah.
girl. Look what you
Good
got on your
girl.
test. Good
Check you out.
girl.
You tried really hard. Yes. It's
And
fascinating.
I'm like, wow, why is that still? And I mean, again, much better, but still, I have that. And I really do struggle with those perceived judgments of others
Mm.
and getting that validation. And I really have to work with, hey, Victoria, you figured out what you're doing, what your path is in life, what you believe is right and wrong, what you want to, you know, teach about, spread when you're doing these workshops and all these things. And so it really shouldn't matter if there's other people that aren't on board that train. Like, not everybody, and it's
Mm.
not for everybody. And it's just a matter of, I guess, trying to just tune that out and stay what I'm doing and not feel like I have to explain to them or, um, get them on board. I have to sometimes realize, guess what? There will be people out there. This will just not be for them. And
Mm.
I, and you know what? They, maybe they won't get me. Maybe they will misjudge me. And I have to just be okay accepting that. But even when I say that to you, it's
I
like,
know you're like
ah,
cringing. It's yeah. So I did loads of work on this
okay.
because I think the same. And there's probably a lot about like I don't know whether this this praise in
Mm,
particular is okay until I check with somebody I trust. So
yeah.
there's that. It's like, oh, is this, is this like is this genuine or not genuine? Is this praise that I can trust? And
Right.
seeing that on somebody else's face.
Mm,
So I think there's probably a lot of that in terms of how women like us sort of navigate the world.
yeah.
And that sensitivity to criticism, I think
Yes.
that's a big part of HSP as well as
Hmm.
ADHD. And
Yes. There's
even
definitely
if it's like
crossover.
perceived criticism, so
Yes.
there's some there's something around that as well. Um, but Tara Moore in her book, there's a whole chapter on unhooking from both criticism and praise. And
Mm,
because both will lead you down a path of not being true to yourself. If you're
interesting.
always chasing the praise and avoiding the criticism, you might not do things that you have to do in terms of fulfilling your destiny because you are looking, there's the carrot and the stick, or I talk about the cake and the stick because,
Yeah.
who'd really be that bothered about carrots? Carrot cake, perhaps. Yes, absolutely. Sign me up. So yeah, it's an interesting one, kind of being able to sort of be comfortable with people aren't going to like everything I do. People are going to, any substantive work she talks about will invite criticism because we will be judged. We're women existing. We will be judged no matter what, let's face it. And
Yeah.
it's kind of how do we, stay true to our core values and our mission and the work that we're here to do.
Yeah. That sounds really informative. I could probably use a bit of that. And I think that does make sense to unplug from all of it, like the praise part of it as well.
Mm,
Which is hard. And it's funny again, I'm sort of having this in the moment realization of that's probably very good girl as well, as just like, look, I'm getting praise. So that's fueling me, that's keeping me going. And
mm,
it's a fine line between knowing that and is the work rewarding. So I've always known that I needed to do something that I really gave a crap about. Like I have
mm,
to, any kind of job I had that was just whatever it was, if didn't have some kind of thing where I felt like I'm making a difference, I'm helping somebody, I need to see kind of the tangible effect of what I'm
mm,
doing. And which led me to have my own business and be able to be very hands on with people and see them having these great aha moments and breakthroughs. But it's an interesting perspective to really think about. Maybe I need to just almost itemize the parts in there that are feeling the worth and seeing the value versus getting the very good feedback, because that is definitely, my husband always jokes and says, oh my gosh, I wish I had your job because look at all you're always people you're always getting these accolades and people are always saying whatever. And I'm like, that's not everyone. It's probably just the ones that you're seeing or we're talking about. But
Mm.
it's gives me pause for thought.
Yeah. And yeah, it is really fascinating. And this is years of work that I've worked on myself for. So that's why I'm able to almost sit at the end of it, because honestly, I would do anything in the past, do anything for praise and
Mm,
avoid criticism, to the point, the people pleasing was so strong with me that well, for example, I started work in this organization and there was somebody who was very much a case of, I'm not interested. Like literally a woman, she's like, she could tell my energy, like Tigger energy. She was like, nope, too much, go away, type of thing. And I made it literally my life's work to make her like me. And we're still friends.
really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so funny.
But she was like, no, no. And I could see that on her face.
That's interesting. So I think for you, that presented in a much more obvious way, that whole people pleasing. And when you were on my podcast, I was asking you if you remembered when you had done your disc profile. And so I
Mm.
think your highest in I influence. And for those of you who do it with the colors, that's yellow. So yellow energy, which is very much that, is very much wanting to connect with others, make sure they're liked. Eyes really are aware of, they're sensitive about rejection because they're so good, they're so giving, they want to make friends and do all that. And so for me, I think, where we started when I said to you, I just didn't necessarily always, I would never have described myself before as a people pleaser.
Hmm.
Um, and I never felt so in that case, I would not, I don't think I would have had the approach you took because it's weird. I almost had more of a, oh, they don't like me. I don't like them. Okay, great. Like
I'm like that now.
a very well, a very different, which is funny. And now I've circled back more to the middle. I think probably when we're young, we probably pick the extremes a little bit, right?
Mm.
So I was like, ugh, fine. And now I'm a little bit more that way. But again, it was subtle for me. So I don't think it was as obvious for me to come to that. And then when I realized the whole people pleasing part of it is just like at the end of the day, no matter what, I would never have wanted someone's feelings to be hurt. So I wouldn't have gone out of my way to befriend them, but I'd also be like, oh, I hope they don't think like that. I'm like, I am totally like A plus plus on the overanalyzing, oh, do you think,
Mm.
oh, I wonder if they thought that. Oh, I wonder if, at night replaying like the little montage of the day or the event, or, that's a very introvert thing to do. I know too, is
Mm.
analyze everything, be like, uh-oh, uh-oh.
What did I do? I might have upset them by
Yes.
saying this.
Oh,
And then
they
you have
didn't
to,
seem right. Are they
yeah.
perhaps yeah. And then it's fascinating, there's people in the world that exist that don't do that. I was like,
I
that must
literally
be,
don't care whose feelings they hurt. Just
I'm
will
like,
say what they think.
that's got to
And
be very, I mean, I'm not recommending it, but I'm like, it must be very liberating. Must sleep well.
yeah, it was like I went to bed and I was like, I was awesome today and fell asleep. Yes, that would be. I am awesome. Everybody loves me. And if they don't, screw them.
Yeah.
Yes. Could you imagine?
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. No, I can't. But it feels freeing.
Yes, it does. It does. And but I was like, a good coaching sort of technique is like, what is the opposite energy here?
Mm,
How can you lean into that a little bit? Like just 10% more
right?
of that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that's funny that you say that because that is one of the things like I will do that in a team workshop if we're working
Yep.
with people and like they have, let's say, very opposite profiles. And like there's a little, I don't know if you've ever done any like forced empathy exercises where you get one person to sort of like literally take on the other person's viewpoint. It's
Mm.
really amazing because if you're at an impasse, but you have to basically debate the other viewpoint. It's amazing what it does to almost like your body chemistry. So you're saying
Mm.
the words, but you're saying them in a way, and it's a great experiment because you no matter what you come away with some kind of deeper understanding. It doesn't mean you're going to all of a sudden 100% be like, okay, problems resolved. You're right. I'm wrong. It's not that. It's just the matter of, oh, I took a walk in their shoes and I tried that on and I can feel it a little bit more now. So I have some really, really cool takeaways from that
Yeah,
exercise.
I bet. And I think one of the problems in the world is there's so much us and them. There's so much
Oh,
extreme views, and there's not enough like let's just talk about it and see where we like have a common ground and sort
Right.
of build from there rather than you're wrong, I'm right, you're mean, you're nasty, so yeah.
You're exactly right. It's so polarized right now. And
Mm,
yeah, it's just of course it would upset. I mean, I'm sure there's many, many people upset about what's going on in the world right now, but
mm,
especially for us in terms of working, working with people trying to do things to build bridges to other different styles, beliefs, it's particularly upsetting, I think, when you
mm.
just see it going so wrong.
I know, I know. And it's like, oh, well, we're raising children in this world, and how do we make sure that they have a strong moral compass and they're able to, know what's right for them? And when you've got all of these outside influences who are not
Yeah,
necessarily sharing values or willing to meet people halfway.
exactly.
Yeah. Victoria, I could literally talk to you all night, as we've demonstrated. So we're rattling through this. So tell me quickly, because we're running out of time. Um, why is it that you do what you do?
Yeah, that's quickly.
I know,
I'm like,
because it's fun.
hmm.
No.
Yeah, I think again we've touched on this. It started with the whole fascination that you and I share in terms of why do people do the things they do? Why do they say what they say? What motivates one person to behave in a manner where someone else would be a completely different?
Mm,
And so I guess just that endless fascination with human behavior. I think because I do have this particular sensitivity to myself being so I think where it comes from is I think as somebody who is definitely an introvert, probably an ambivert technically, but relate strongly to the introversion being the HSP with the high sensory processing. I think I always somehow felt like, yeah, I'm not completely fitting in. Like there's something I always sort of knew something is a little bit different about me. And some of the things that, unfortunately, I maybe heard in terms of a descriptor of me. So some of them would be like cold, aloof, um, just thinking
mm,
thinking you're better than me. And it's just like so absolutely completely wrong.
mhm.
And
The opposite.
right, feeling
Yes.
the sting of that is like, oh my gosh, like, and I certainly can see, looking back, where that would be a thing.
Mm.
Unfortunately seen my concentration face on video before. It's not great. But when you're someone who's introspective, right, and you're really mulling something over, and so now one of the things I have to try to do is right, remind my expression, smile when you're thinking, Victoria, smile. But I think because I was on the other end of that, I think because I came to realize, oh my gosh, I'm being misjudged. And then, I wonder if I'm also misjudging people. And is there a way that we could go in and figure out what our intentions are and make sure that we are not going to continue doing that? Because I think what you've probably observed in the workplace and what I've observed, you can look at all these things. They did this famous, MIT did this famous study. It was published in the Harvard Business Review, and they were looking at, could you predict a successful team? Like, what were the factors? And they looked at all kinds of things, right? So it was education, it was experience, what were the degrees in, all very much that. And guess what? Shocker. It comes down to communication is the number one predictor of successful teams.
Mhm.
And so, for me, working with, individuals, but again, mostly with teams, is really like it's the quote soft skills that people, refer to as soft skills. Well, guess what? They're essential skills and they
I
are
know, like
right.
they're not soft, they're hard.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That's for those who are listening on audio. I did the air quotes over the off over the soft skills, but they're the essential skills, and that
Mm,
I have seen that. That's what derails teams and office cultures. Absolutely, beyond anything else, is those things where people not being self-aware, not having empathy, uh, all of those emotional intelligence skills and the ability to really take on another viewpoint, understand where someone's coming from, realize you don't have to be the same person and agree on everything. And
mm,
I think that really kind of drove me to do it. And when I can see people having breakthroughs for things where there was a barrier and they just thought, no, we can't work together, or no, this person thinks this about me. And to actually be able to give them some tools and see them be able to have success, to come out of that and have a path forward is so rewarding. And you
Mm.
know, that's why I do it. It just feels so worthwhile to me to see that happen.
It's fascinating. And the best team I've ever worked on, there was two of us. There's a very small team, but we're doing a huge global project. And I it was amazing to work with this lady. And I was like, but what is it about it? And it took me like ages afterwards. And I'm like, because I am, you know, I couldn't go colors, yellow and red, and she
Red,
was
yeah.
very blue and green. And
Yeah.
it made a whole team. And what we'd
And
achieved
yes.
together was like beyond what like 10 of us could have done.
Right?
And it was
Yes.
just amazing because I was able to sort of help in areas that she was struggling, and she was able to, keep me to task and to detail, and areas that I was struggling in. And I've never worked, even now, with somebody that was just we
Yeah.
could have achieved anything together, us two.
It's funny you say that. It's almost like a magical. It's like the secret formula. And yeah, I've worked with teams where there's 8 or 10 people on a team, and not all four of those colors or four of those
Mm.
factors will be met. And yet there's times I've worked with people who are 2 or 3 people, and they have it, and it shows. You can really,
Mm.
and now again, that's part one. Like part one is the strategic, like, can we cover all bases? Part two is now, how do we communicate and play nice in the sandbox, right? But once
Mhm.
you master that, it's like, look out. You're going to just take off and accomplish so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. So thank you for doing what you do to help organizations, because the amount of the amount of drama and trauma that people in organizations
Oh
do
yeah.
feel because of these issues
Yes.
is unreal. Okay, so my last question
Yes.
is, again, I do not want to uh take somebody's good girl conditioning, and we'll change it to Victoria Michelle's conditioning.
Uh,
So I don't like to offer advice, she says, having offered advice
uh-huh.
all through
Uh-huh.
this podcast. But what can the audience think about in
Yeah.
terms of their own lives?
Yeah. So I know, and you told me, you gave me a little heads up as to like the type of questions that you ask. And I know this is sort of one of them, like, what do you want? What's a question you would want someone to think about? And I was like, oh my gosh, like,
The
same thing.
pressure.
I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But I think, and I've touched on this already. So I think for me, if I were to answer it really simply with the one question, the one word would be why. So I'm going to expand on that. The question is why. And it's certainly a question that I ask all the time. It's funny because when we talk about discs, so my highest factor and my energy, it's green is the highest. And the questions that green and highest steadiness ask always is why. So that's not surprising. But what I mean by that is, when we were talking about people rushing to judgments,
Mm,
um, I guess I just always think if we all just took a pause and said, huh, I wonder why. Why is that person making that comment? Like, where might this be coming from? I really think that is so powerful to just take that pause and ask it. And I don't know if Michelle, if we had talked about this before, if you're familiar with Mark Brackett. Um, I believe he's at Yale professor. He wrote a book, How We Feel. It's huge in the world of emotional intelligence.
mm,
And I really love the way that he frames it. So I'm going to borrow this from him and say, so instead of he always says, strive to be an emotion scientist, not an emotional judge. So instead of being like, oh, she's so she's so angry, what's her problem? Versus, I noticed Victoria seems a little bit more hopped up today. I wonder why. I wonder what's happening there. Look, that's the same. You're basically having the same thing, but look at just framing that up a different way. So I think if we all just took a moment and thought, why? And approach it with curiosity, not judgment. That behavior seems a little out of place. I wonder why. That's it.
mm.
Listen, it's not going to cure everything, but it goes a heck of a long way to forming some type of curiosity and empathy towards other people. And I really think that's a game changer.
That's fantastic. And another book for me to buy
There you go, right? Just
and
like
read,
add it to the
obviously.
list. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
Michelle, I don't know about you, but currently have one, two, I have three. I have three, and that's just like I like to read fiction as well, just
Hmm.
just for my own enjoyment. But yeah, currently I have three quote nonfiction business kind of books that I have to read, and they're kind of piling up. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
Christmas
I've got.
Christmas plans.
I know. It's like I've got enough books now to sort of I could literally go away for a month on my own and get through them.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that
yeah,
sounds like fun. See, there's
it
an
does.
introvert thing to say. That sounds like so much
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
You read books.
That's like, yay, read books and eat food.
Love it. Maybe a glass of wine in there. Just
Yeah,
saying.
maybe. Awesome. Well, thank you ever so much, Victoria, for coming on and talking to me. And if you at home or on your dog walk or wherever you are, that's a bit of a weird thing. I've never said that before. If you listener want to get in touch, all of the details will be in the show notes. And
Awesome.
yeah, it's been absolutely just a treat. So thank you very much.
I agree. I always enjoy chatting with you, Michelle. Thank you.